Well, welcome to another Friday night. I decided I wanted to do a series on fawning. I've talked about fawning in the past and given an overview to explain it, but to me, it's such a critical piece to understand if one is to understand complex trauma. We talk all the time about the four F's or the four survival responses of trauma. So there's fight and flight and freeze, which are the most well known and well understood. But then there's this fourth one called fawning. And what I have found over the years, it is actually probably the most common survival coping strategy for people with complex trauma, but it's the least understood. Most people from complex trauma aren't even aware that they use fawning as a survival strategy. So it operates out of their subconscious, but it's running their life. And so I really want to do a deep dive into understanding fawning. And I hope that in doing so, you'll really be able to start to see any fawning tendencies in yourself and be able to begin to understand them and know when you need to change them and when it's a healthy type of fawning versus survival unhealthy type of fawning. As I look back at my own life, what I began to realize over the last number of years as I've done this work, not just in learning, but in working on myself, is that my main survival skills were flight and fawning. But for years, I didn't even realize that I fawned because it was part of my upbringing. It was part of my religious tradition. It was taught to me as a love, as being spiritual, as pleasing God, as being healthy. And so I was trained to fawn, and I didn't even realize that it was driven by fear. It was losing myself. It was abandoning myself. It was feeding shame. Didn't realize any of that. And so that's why I think so many people fawn without even realizing it and without realizing the damage that it does to themselves and how it prevents healthy relationships. So I want to be clear up front that I am not doing this in a judgmental way, being harsh on people who fawn. No, this was a survival skill. This was a necessary thing that people had to do in order to try to prevent getting hurt, in order to try to get their needs met, in order to try to gain love and respect. And so this isn't about beating up the child that was trying to survive. This is about understanding what it means and why a child had to do it, why it became the only survival strategy left to them that would work to some degree that enabled them to survive and get their needs met. Now, often when I do a little mini series, I like to draw attention to other resources. And if you're looking for a great book to read about fawning, it's called Fawning by Dr. Ingrid Clayton. And I'm going to draw on this book throughout the series because to me it's the best book that I've read on the topic. And it's really thorough, really, really well done. And it puts fawning in the context of trauma and survival. So let's begin by just reviewing what we've covered in the past and understanding fawning. So we're going to begin with the vagal system, which we know there's the parts of your autonomic nervous system. There's your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. And when you're in your ideal ventral vagal state, which is your ideal state where you feel safe, you feel accepted, you're able to connect with safe people, and you experience all of your emotions and are able to regulate them. That's the ideal state. That's where we thrive. That's where we flourish. That's where we grow. And then in that state, your sympathetic and parasympathetic work in harmony together. So your sympathetic enables you to work and perform every day, and then your parasympathetic lets you rest and heal and digest every day. And those two work in harmony. They're not one is good, the other's bad. They're both part of this important system in your nervous system that enables you to be healthy. So that's your ideal state, but it's all dependent on safety and connection. What happens if safety and connection aren't available? Well, then your nervous system senses danger. And so the first response when it senses danger is it goes to 100% sympathetic nervous system. So we call it the sympathetic vagal state. And in that state, the brain then releases cortisol, which releases adrenaline, which gives you extra energy to fight or flight. So the whole focus is I need to escape either by destroying the enemy or by running from the enemy so that I can get back to a place of safety. I can get back to my ventral vagal state. But what happens if the person can't fight or flight? They're too little to fight or flight. Then the vagus system, it switches from your sympathetic 100% to your dorsal vagal state, where it goes 100% to your parasympathetic. So now instead of trying to flee outward and using cortisol to turbocharge you, now it goes inward and it uses natural opioids to enable you to retreat to safety internally. And those opioids also numb pain because it's pretty sure you're going to get hurt. And so in that state, you retreat to this dissociated state where you feel safe, you feel good, and that is freeze. The question then becomes, if the person that has to go to freeze is also a little child who is still dependent on others to meet their needs because they're too little to meet their needs, and they're still dependent on others to somewhat protect them and help them in this world, what then is their option? They can't just go to freeze and they would die there. So they have to go to fawn. So they still need their parents, the people who are either abusing or neglecting them, to somehow like them, to somehow take an interest in them, to somehow meet their needs, to somehow love them. And so fawning becomes the necessary survival tool, the ultimate survival tool, the only one that's going to allow them to stay alive. And so what do? They now must become attuned to these authority figures that are neglecting or abusing them, become attuned to their needs, their moods, their beliefs, and become a pro at taking care of those authorities so that those authorities will like them and then meet their needs. Now, it's quite interesting that fawning is actually a hybrid nervous system response. So on the one hand, it looks like you're in your sympathetic nervous system, that there's a hyperarousal because you are running around taking care of everybody's needs. You're super energetic. You're super engaged with people. You're super happy. You're funny. You are helping. It looks like you're in your sympathetic nervous system, but you're also very much in your parasympathetic nervous system in a hypoarousal because you are detaching from yourself. You're dissociating from yourself. You are numbing yourself to your own needs, to your own hurts, and often you are not even feeling your emotions, your pain, the anger, the emptiness, any of that. And so what fawning is, it's walking a fine line between fight, flight, and freeze. So If you go to fight or flight, you're going to get hurt because the person's going to fight back and beat you, or they're going to chase you and catch you. If you go to freeze, you're going to die. So you're trying to walk this fine line that's going to be partly some fight flight features, but partly some freeze features in order to survive. I think what's important to understand is that fawning is a skill necessary within relationships. The context is always dangerous relationships. It's not necessarily dangerous circumstances, but that could be part of dangerous relationships. The key and the core is it's surviving within dangerous relationships where the authorities are neglecting or abusing you. So it's a response within a relationship. So let me expand on it a bit more here. Dr. Peter Walker, who's coined the term fawning, he's defined it as a response to a threat by becoming more appealing to the threat. And I love that. So instead of running, instead of fighting, instead of getting angry and lashing out, instead of turning hatred on that threat, you act more appealing to the threat. So fawners mirror or merge with someone else's desires and expectations. So I find out what you desire, then that's what I desire. I find out what you expect, that's what I expect. So I then try to become a clone of you. And that way, I will diffuse conflict rather than confront conflict, which would make it worse. So the best chance you have with an angry authority is not to confront the conflict and fight it. It is to find out what they like, mirror or merge with what they like, and that will diffuse the conflict. And that will let you stay safe for now. Not necessarily healthy in the long run, but for now, I got to stay safe. That's the highest priority. And fawning enables you to do that. So it's important to understand that fawning then isn't a person that's consciously manipulating, trying to manipulate people to get their needs met. No, it's a person who's trying to find safety in the midst of being abused, exploited, neglected, or harmed in any other way. It's the ultimate way of trying to survive. And it may come across like it's manipulating, but it's really, I'm merging and becoming like you so you don't hurt me anymore. So sometimes fawning is referred to as please or appease. The person is staying safe with an unsafe person that they're dependent on. And the only way they can get their needs met and stay safe is they got to please that person or appease that person's anger. So that means then, and this is where now it's going to build, it means that they have to, number one, be very attuned to the needs of that person, the moods of that person, the beliefs of that person, the values of that person, every emotion that person has. So a fawner develops this amazing radar system that can detect the slightest change in mood in the other person. And they have thousands of different cues that tell them something is slightly different from normal. That's how sophisticated their radar system is. But what that then means is they're making the other person take up all the space. They're all that matters, so they must become smaller and smaller. They must suppress their needs because the other person's needs, that's all that matters. They must sacrifice their needs because they got to meet the other person's needs. That's the only way to appease them. And so they then become smaller and smaller. They suppress their needs and desires more and more. What then happens is they now are more attuned to the other person. than they are to themselves. So they can know what the other person's moods are or emotions are, but they don't know what their own emotions are. They know what the other person thinks and believes. They don't know what they think and believe. They just think what the other person thinks. They just reflect the other person's emotions. So they gradually become more attuned to others than to themselves. Further, it goes beyond this. They then begin to believe that the only way they can be happy is they have to make the other person happy. And so that means they have to make themselves responsible for the other person's emotions. So if the other person's upset, they got to fix it. If the other person's sad, they got to make them happy. So now they don't have their own emotions to take care of. They got to take care of the other person's emotions and fix them so that they can be happy. But then it goes farther. They begin to realize, I have to be happy all the time. Because if I'm not happy all the time, then that's going to make the other person unhappy. They're going to get upset that I'm not happy, and then that's going to make me unhappy. So I must be happy all the time. I must take care of their emotions. I must be more attuned to them than to me. So I got to suppress my other emotions, my needs. So what you can begin to see is they believe that they must become whatever the other person wants them to be in order for them to be happy, in order for them to get their needs met. There's no other recipe for happiness except I lose myself and become what they want to be. But what I hope you're seeing is I am becoming less human. I'm suppressing needs. I'm suppressing desires. I'm suppressing my personality. I am suppressing everything about me that the person doesn't like. And so I'm becoming less authentic and less human. So the price of admission to any relationship for a fawner is they have to forfeit all their needs, all their rights, their preferences, and their boundaries. They have to lose themselves. They have to make themselves smaller. That is the price of admission to every relationship. Let me take it a wee bit farther. What a fawner feels deep down is helpless. They're too small to meet their own needs, but they can't get anybody else to meet their own needs. They're feeling a helplessness to take care of themselves. So what I want you to see is fawning is actually an attempt by that child to gain some power. Because if I can get you to like me, then you'll want to meet my needs. So getting you to like me becomes my power. It becomes my super strength, because then you will want to meet my needs because you like me. And so fawning is an attempt of a powerless person to try and gain a sense of power. A final thing that I want to mention. Fawning is looking for yourself outside of yourself. So you lose yourself, but you're still looking to find yourself by pleasing everybody else. That is the tragedy of fawning. And so, just to clarify here, what I hope you realize, when I described fawning, I really described what has also been called codependency, people-pleasing. And so those terms have often been interchanged, and so people blend them all together. But what I'm hoping you realize is fawning is where this all starts. And it's not just about how you cope in relationships, it's why you had to cope that way. It's you were trying to survive abuse and neglect. You were trying to get needs met. And yes, maybe in adult life that began to look like people pleasing and codependency, but that started out as ultimate survival skills. So let me end with this. Fawning is, and here's some characteristics, and you can see if they apply to you. It's apologizing to someone when they've hurt you. It's befriending the person that's bullying you in order to get the job, keep the boyfriend, pay the rent. It's painting red flags as white flags whether you do it consciously or not. It's trusting others more than yourself. It's holding out hope that people will change if you try hard enough to help them. It's making excuses for people who have hurt you, privileging their pain over yours. It's not having a voice, because speaking up will only make things worse. It's always putting others' needs ahead of your own and calling it love. It's thinking that peace, which is preventing conflict or getting hurt, comes from conforming to whoever's in authority. If I can make them happy, then we'll have peace. So it's that short-term definition of peace. It's thinking that one must earn love by becoming what the other person wants you to be. It's experiencing anxiety if you think of honestly expressing your needs or desires or personality. So that's a quick overview of understanding fawning. Next, we're going to dive into a deeper dive of the characteristics of fawning. But I hope that just helps you begin to understand it and makes you stop and may realize, wow, this I need to learn more about, and I need to take a look at myself. This could be an issue for me. That's the end of our talk. I just wanted to say that we've discovered that about half of the people that watch this haven't subscribed to our channel. And we would just love if you would take the time to subscribe, to like, to share this with others. That just helps with the algorithms of YouTube that then make this available to more people. So thank you again for your time. Have a great day.